Hello, this is Cotton Stoops, and if we're gonna do a video based on a Lumion that is pretty much reliant on its very own niche, then we're of course gonna do one on Cosmeleon, a new weather type roamer that is pretty much gonna live or die based on if the weather is set up or not. So in today's video, we're going to be learning how to use and counter Cosmeleon. Specifically, I'm going to be going over the sets and roles in order to know how to use Cosmeleon in your battles, as well as knowing the counters and checks in teammates in order to team build around it. Today's video, we're going to be going over how to use and counter Cosmeleon. So the role that Cosmeleon is going to be playing is pretty much dependent on its, well, not base stats, it's pretty much dependent on its move pool and its ability. There's really not much to say here because it pretty much all has 100 in all of its base stats. However, one thing I will mention is that its melee and range attack, as 100 as high as it may seem, it is nowhere near as high to the likes of Soulburst Eruptodon, Jolttooth, Valkyrie, Top-Tab, Ikazune, all of those hard-hitting Lumions. And what's even worse is that Cosmeleon does not have a damage boosting ability like either of them, and as the meta has taught us, specifically with Dense Fog, Charonix makes it so that you basically hit for nothing now, and this is gonna basically be Cosmeleon for most of the battle. However, it does get its problems somewhat fixed with its diverse coverage, and I mean diverse coverage of 110 base stats, or 110 potential stab moves, with fire, water, air, spirit, and electric all being one of them. Bulk up, dodge, and peace of mind, as well as having access to both enchantments, Raging Flame, Soft Water, Gust, and Impersonate. So this Lumion has a lot of things that can run, which means that Cosmeleon can ultimately play a lot of solid niches in your matches. So, Cosmeleon, what's its role gonna be? It's definitely going to be a weather abuser because I didn't talk about adaptive, but Cosmeleon will adapt to the weather that is set up. If not, it's just going to stay as simple type, and I'm going to be going more in depth into this with the set. However, what I will be using, and most people will be using, it will be using as an anti-weather cleaner. Because of Cosmeleon's diverse coverage to fit pretty much any type of weather and scenario, Cosmeleon has the potential to hit a lot of Lumions, specifically a lot of Rain Team and Heat Wave Team Lumions super effectively, ultimately making Cosmeleon a pretty good anti-weather cleaner in the metagame. Another example of this is Rancidor to Rain Teams. However, Cosmeleon has the widespread coverage for a lot of those teams. So the first set that I'm going to be running with Cosmeleon is going to be an anti-rain cleaner set, which is going to be utilizing the ability adaptive because it's its own ability that it can really use. The anti-rain cleaner set is going to be mainly focused in beating rain. However, it does have the potential to beat other playstyles such as Heat Wave and Fog. More on that later. The personality is going to be Nimble, so you can outspeed Nimble Vesperatus at max speed. And then for your moveset, Thunder Blast, Typhoon, and Climate Cannon. Climate Cannon is mainly here for your stab without weather setup. However, Climate Cannon is also pretty decent if you are up against fog teams, because Spirit hits Spirit super effectively. You might as well run this so you can actually get the jump and outspeed those Lumions. Typhoon makes it so you can hit other matchups specific on rain teams for neutrally or super effectively. This goes for the case with Lashent. You can hit that neutrally. You can hit Top-Tab super effectively, and then of course you can hit Florant super effectively. All pretty common plant types that are going to be running on rain. Thunder Blast is mainly for the plentiful of water types that don't really care about you if you are not running Thunder Blast. Typhoon is also pretty good for hitting Dokomoris for neutral damage. Of course, you don't do too much back. However, it is good for chip. Peace of Mind is specifically great so you can set up your damage and utilize your bulk. It allows you to take advantage of some Lumions such as Gargoyle Defense, mainly walls that have weaker defense sides, and then Flare Blast if you want to try and run a boot set. Speaking of boots, I would not recommend it because Cosmeleon really has 100 range attack and that's it. It is also pretty inconsistent with its missing, and then the item Power Cuffs makes it so you do have the ability to take advantage of your energy stat, which is pretty good. 4 energy is so you can have the 4 energy rule here, and 8 range defense is to make sure Protagon gets a melee attack increase from you. 88 HP is to increase your HP stat, which is the leftovers, and 200 range attack and speed is very simple, just to max out speed a lot of stuff as possible, while also hitting pretty hard. Anyways, a different set, which is going to be an anti-rain defense set, but it also works in countering other weathers, specifically with adaptive as your ability and your personality being robust. On rain teams, you can use robust to Raging Flame Lumions such as Lashent, Soulburst Florant, Dokomori, and Luminami, which are going to be running robust most of the time. If you are up against Heatwave teams, you can try, or not Heatwave teams, but if you are up against Thunderstorm teams, burning the possible Joltooth, Halvantic is pretty much always good anyways. And that has some pretty solid utility at that. Robust also just helps you in a lot of matchups that I'll talk about later. As for your moveset, I really encourage Phantom Blast and Hydro Blast here on this set, as Phantom Blast does pretty well against opposing Nevermares that they can't really hit you much for anyway. Then Hydro Blast is going to be for specific Gargolem defenses and other Earth types, while Climate Cannon is just to match whatever weather is up. And if there is no weather up, then you have a solid stab option. Peace of Mind is going to be here so you can try and take advantage of some other Lumions. However, Raging Flame to be a full complete support Cosmeleon is also a pretty good option. Your item of choice is going to be the Health Amulet so you can gain some consistent recovery with your defenses. And then as for your TPs, 152 speed is to outspeed 200 nimble Magmadiers, which is going to be pretty good because they're always common. And then for your 152 HP and 48 melee defense with robust, allows you to take 4 hit KOs from Nevermare if there is no weather setup. If there is Thunderstorm, then it makes it even better for you. If you are also this personality, you can tank 3 hit KOs from Brawny Halvantics, which are starting to come up. You take 2 shots from Tatab or Hunter, so you can take the ability and then of course Raging Flame them, which is always solid. And then for your 144 range attack, it is so you can make it so that you can 2-hit KO clever max invested Gargolems with a +1 on the swap with not with Climate Cannon but with Hydro Blast. And then for energy, just 44 energy rule. So with that out of the way, let's get right onto the TPs. And no, they're not the TPs, the counters and checks and teammates. So the counters and checks and teammates for Cosmeleon is very simple. You just want to run revenge killers that can possibly hit this thing super effectively. Now, of course, because of its unpredictable nature, you have some predicting to do here. Zulong is a pretty good revenge killer under Rain or Fog because no matter what, Zulong has the courage to hit both. And then as for Deladrix, Skellig, and of course Harapaigo, it can revenge kill it pretty easily if it's under a rain or a heat wave. However, this also applies to gusts. If you're using a Cosmeleon under gust for some reason, that's also an option, but mainly Cosmeleon is going to be answered defensively with ranged balls such as Soulburst Gastroke, Oxydrake, Dokomori, and Vanillin. Now, to make sure that you guys don't mess up here, Oxidize for Oxydrake is very dangerous, as well as Dokomori for being Sponge. So here's some synergy for later. Running the Fog teams with Cosmeleon is specifically pretty good, as this makes it so Gastroke, Oxydrake, and Dokomori lose their abilities. It is more so damaging to Dokomori, as you can now break through it with Hydro Blast. And as for Soulburst Gastroke, it really doesn't like it losing insulated, which makes it so ice type moves are just so much better against it, as well as running Hydro Blast, or not Hydro Blast, but Fire Blast for it as well. Now onto some Cosmeleon cores and teammates. Obviously, there's not a lot of that I would really say because Cosmeleon exists on its own as a pretty isolated cleaner, but using weather leads, specifically Chironix, is very solid. Weather leads helps Cosmeleon get its adaptive up. However, depending on the weather teams that are going to be present, you might not even need a weather lead because they're going to be obviously setting up the weather. Chironix I really recommend for fog because fog is just pretty solid. Cosmeleon doesn't get affected by fog, it only gets buffs from it, and then it can break stuff like Dokomori a lot more easier. Billowforge or Deladrix are also pretty good if you want to use it under rain or heat wave. I wouldn't really recommend Thunderstorm simply because Thunderstorm is just a pile of garbage, and then Whippledrift, no, just no. Anyways, heavy rainfall offensive cores, Deladrix is going to be a main thing here, and then Lashent, it mainly helps against the likes of Soulburst Gasstroke and Dokomori. It certainly isn't the best of best answers, however, it is there. You can just use some other offensive melee attackers to hit them. It's not really that hard to do so. You can use stuff like Dragoden specifically for Dokomoris and Oxydrix if you are really worried about that. And Deladrix here is mainly to set up and the heavy rainfall, and then of course boots option and zip zap on a lot of stuff. After this, defensive or offensive fog cores, I really recommend Vesperatu or Ursul on fog teams. Ursul has a niche that Vesperatu doesn't, and that is of course breaking Tongilin under fog. Of course, Tongilin doesn't have resilience, and it wouldn't even matter anyway, as sharpened pep jabs from Ursul will be able to break through Tongilin. Chironix is also another option to support Vesperatu or Ursul because most likely Obsidian or Tongilin or Ursnack will be swapping in on, not Ursnack, but mainly those two will be swapping in on them. So Chironix can be able to take advantage of it. It also just has Spite and a lot of great offensive tools. And of course, Cosmeleon can take advantage of the dense fog by breaking through Dokomori a lot more easier. Thunderstorm offensive cores are a lot more brighter and a lot more simpler to use. In all honesty, using Hunter or Jolttooth to specifically bait in stuff like Ursnack and Tongilin for Meditoad to swap in is a lot more better and a lot more interesting to use as a core. You can of course use Halvansic over Jolttooth if you are feeling like that. Hunter necessarily isn't needed here. It's mainly so it can be a cleaning partner along with Cosmeleon. And then as for Heatwave cores, Chartiki and Billowforge are pretty good offensive Heatwave Lumions. Again, I did not mention Soulburst Eruptodon or Soulburst Crackloa here because I just want to recommend some niche options. Chartiki is still under testing, however, it is a pretty good nuke at that. Soulburst Raptodon is of course still as great, however, the reason why I did not put Soulburst Crackaloa here is simply because it gets taken advantage of way too easily by Deladrix, which is going to be popping up on a lot of teams, and then of course it will override your Heat Wave. So overall, Cosmeleon is definitely a Lumion that can be good depending on whether or not it actually has the correct teammates and the correct coverage to hit what it needs to hit. Cosmeleon suffers from 4 move syndrome heavily. It's not like one of those Lumions like Teclipse or Himber where it doesn't need the coverage. It can just have its stabs and then just be good. Cosmeleon has to be wary a lot about its stuff. So using Cosmeleon sparingly and then of course learning the metagame and adapting your coverage is going to be the best way to use Cosmeleon in the future. So make sure you like and subscribe to see more videos related to Cosmeleon and weather. Of course, this is Conastoop signing off to remind you that Zulong is still a dumpster fire.